You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Christopher Media, let's make some noise.
What number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
Well, it's 1969, okay. Walk across the USA. It's another year for me and you. Another year with nothing to do. It's another year for me and you. Another year with nothing to do.
Pronto regia? Pronto. Questo è un collegamento speciale. Da uno studio di fortuna vi trasmettiamo le ultime immagini a noi pervenute.
Ed eccomi di nuovo a voi. Sono qui per farvi qualche raccomandazione. Se vedete segnali di questo colore, significa che la zona è infetta. Giallo uguale peste. Ma siamo sicuri che questi segnali non li vedremo mai.
Togliere i riflettori! Via i riflettori! What do you want?
Siamo dalla televisione, ma chi trasportate? Ma voi trasportate il Papa?
It's a secret! We can't say! We can't!
Fateci parlare un attimo, forse l'ultima trasmissione per il mondo è importante.
Ok, only on the way to the helicopter.
Ti ho seminato!
Non è vero! Non è vero! Giura che non è vero! Perché l'hai fatto? Perché l'hai fatto? Perché l'hai fatto? Perché l'hai fatto? Non ne avevamo il diritto! Non ne avevamo il diritto!
Il seme dell'uomo germogliato! Ho seminato! Ho seminato! Il seme dell'uomo germogliato! Tutti i figli dei figli! Ho seminato! Ho seminato! Il seme dell'uomo germogliato! 10.000 milioni di figli! Tutti i figli dei figli! 10.000 milioni di figli! Ho seminato! Ho seminato! Il seme dell'uomo germogliato! Tutti i figli dei figli! 1 milione, 1 miliardo di figli! Ho seminato!
Arrivederci a tra poco.
Welcome to the projection booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me is Ms. Kat Ellinger.
Hello.
And also back in the booth is Ms. Heather Drain.
Hello, hello.
It's less than 2 minutes to midnight on the Doomsday Clock. On Chinese New Year, our Eastern neighbors are being quarantined from the coronavirus. And here we are talking about the end of the world as shown in 1969 by director Marco Ferreri. The Seed of Man stars Marzio Margine as Cino and Anne Wiazemsky as Dora, the only lovers left alive after a plague has wiped out most of the world's population. The two live in a seaside home where Cino has a museum to trivial objects, and he feels he has to repopulate the world, but Dora has other ideas. Of course, we're going to be spoiling this film as well as a few other Ferreri films, so if you don't want those ruined, please track down the movie and watch it. We will still be here when you get back. So, Kat, when was the first time you saw Seed of Man, and what did you think?
Well, I actually forgot how fucking weird it was until we planned this episode. I watched it again. I had a vague memory that it was weird, and Ferreri does lots of weird, but not as weird as when I started watching it back and thought, God, why didn't we pick the ape woman? It started with me with Le Grand Bouffe, actually, which I absolutely obsessed with that film. And then I got on a real Marco Ferreri trip. The difficulty is his films are just so hard. Some of his films are so hard to track down. They just don't seem to have had the same treatment on home video that the bigger masters, Pasolini and crew, have had. But I became really obsessed with him because he's just such a unique voice in that whole period of Italian cinema. He's just so unique. He's such a rebel. He's such an anarchist. And he's also really funny, which is one of the other things I love about this. Isn't so funny, this film, but some of his films are very funny.
And Heather, was this a first time Ferreri for you?
a few days ago, my answer would have been yes, but doing kind of the research for this episode and looking into this film and Ferreri, I realized I actually had exposure to two of his films, and one of which I was telling you both off when we weren't recording, was Real Wild Cinema. Back in the 90s, had clips of the ape woman, which is fascinating because Real World Cinema is tied to Something Weird Video and stuff, which is fantastic. But it's kind of surreal to think of the era where you'd have like an artist like Ferreri being put like kind of on the drive-in grindhouse circuit, which is kind of fascinating and cool. And that wasn't unusual at all for a lot of art house people as far as how they were, pushed in the States. But my first big one was actually Tales of Ordinary Madness, because I'm a huge Bukowski. I love Bukowski. And I thought it was really good. I felt like it was, like it's almost better if you divorce it from Bukowski a little bit, because it's very like, I don't know. It's
very Italian. It's very Italian. It's like an Italian interpretation of Bukowski.
I think that's beautifully put. Yeah, because it's funny because, Barfly obviously is still made by a foreign director because it's Barbet Schroeder, but Barfly feels exactly like a Bukowski novel, and it's but Tales of Ordinary Madness is really good. And plus, come on, Ben Gazzara and Susan Tyrrell, yes, please. But nothing could have prepared me for Seed of Man. Nothing. And in fact, I'm almost glad I went into this kind of like a lamb to the slaughter. And because, oh my God, this film, I found it to be a bit of a slow burn, but once it gets cooking, there's some great stuff here. I can't wait to kind of get into the latter part of the film.
I had this on DVD for the longest time and was just looking for an excuse to watch it. And I remember I was putting together my wish list of movies to talk about, and I had Moju, The Blind Beast, and I had The Laughing Woman, and I knew both of those had large female statues in them. And then somebody said, oh, you should add The Seeds of Man to that. And I think they were talking about the woman on the beach, the figure that he carves out of sand. It's a really, really tenuous connection to those other films.
I'd say the other two are really connected, but not this one.
Right. But though strangely, those are both 1969. This is 1969. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll add this. And then it kind of makes sense. We were talking about Ferreri a few weeks ago when we were doing Porcile. It's got one of the same actresses, or it's got the same actress that was in Porcile as in this. And it's got, he worked a ton with Ugo Tognazzi. That was one of his go-to guys. And so it's okay, well, this kind of makes sense almost as a double feature to Porcile.
There are some crossover. I love it when Marco Ferreri turns up in films. I forgot he was in Porcile. One of my favourite ones is Casanova 70, which is a Marcello Mastroianni film, and he's in that as this jealous count.
He does a good job of acting. He especially acts very well as a corpse in this one.
And he kind of stands out as well. It's a bit of a character, isn't he, with his weird beard, which we see in Seeds of Man, placed on one of his characters. So
yeah, we were just talking about Eros Plus Massacre, and there's a character in there who's a director, though he's a director of commercials. So I was like, well, he's a stand-in for Yoshida. And in this one, yeah, Cino, when he adopts that Marco Ferreri beard, I was just like, okay, yeah. It's you can look at Richard Dreyfuss, and he's got the glasses and the beard, and you're like, okay, yeah, he kind of looks like Steven Spielberg. He's kind of a stand-in for the director, but nobody's got that. Other than when you go to Amish country, nobody's got that beard going on.
No. It's brilliant, though.
I think we need to do something called The Weird Beard of Marco Ferreri.
His beard is amazing. I don't know. It's why he's so different to everyone else. I think that's why I'm attracted to his work and just him as a character, because he seemed to be totally on his own trip. He had no fashion sense. He had that weird Amish beard. He didn't play lip service to the press. He was really outspoken. I just love him. He was a real maverick.
And I know there's one book for sure dedicated to his stuff, though it's written in Italian. And finding articles written about this film, forget about it. It was so difficult to even just find a mention of it in Italian sci-fi articles or something. And it's like, okay, I mean, you can say this is a sci-fi movie because it takes place after the apocalypse, but I mean, there's no ray guns in here or anything, so you're really stretching the sci-fi means.
Ferreri, though, as I mentioned just a minute ago, he's so neglected. But I hate using the word underrated, but he really is. And I think part of that, it's him and Elio Petri as well as another one. People just don't seem to bother with their films. And I think a lot of the reason is because Ferreri did a lot of comedy. And there always tends to be this looking down at comedy from the kind of upper echelons of film scholarship. And I wonder if that's why. I know this isn't technically a comedy, but I see him as an Italian Buñuel. He was definitely in the same ballpark. He was incredibly important and he was as controversial as Pasolini. When you think Le Grand Boeuf was as controversial as Salò. When I was researching Salò, I found a lot of articles about Le Grand Boeuf at the same time. It was as outrageous, but we never hear about it. And hardly any of his films are out on Blu-ray. And it's just, I don't know. I wonder if it is that comedy connection, because scholars tend to like the serious stuff, don't they? And plus, Marco Ferreri was always taking the piss out of people, which is one of the other things I really love about him. So he didn't really hand it to them on a plate, did he? He would refuse to talk about what his films meant.
And those first two films that he made were very comical, but he insisted that they were neorealist films. So it's like he
was a troll, though, Mark.
He was.
He was a total troll, and I think that's one of the other things that I love about him is he seemed to have this real kind of cheeky attitude towards critics, especially if they were super serious. And I think he was a bit of a troll. And he obviously didn't take himself too seriously either, if you see some of the roles that he played as an actor.
And he's going to come up again later on this year when we talk about The Lion Has Seven Heads, because he actually was the production manager, I believe, for Glauber Rocha's film. So it's like he had connections with the Brazilian Cinema Novo. He was all over the French New Wave. I mean, he and Godard were going back and forth.
Yeah, he was a huge producer as well. It's like, why is he so ignored? I don't get it. I don't understand it.
I'm thinking maybe next year we just do a whole month dedicated to Ferreri because, yeah, his films are so underwatched and, yeah, they're so much fun to talk about. And he had these themes that we'll talk about as we're talking about this movie that he would come back to. So it's like interesting to see how he would play those themes off of each other and weave them in and out of different films. One of the things I wanted to know was about these opening credits and what is going on with this like low hum that's going on and all of these pictures of what are these people that were in the war? What is going on with all of these black and white photos?
I'm sure it has some sort of significance, but yeah. They're obviously people with some sort of, there's some reason why those people, but that noise as well, it's like, brrr.
And the pictures go on past the end of the credits. They keep going for like a while after the final credit.
See, I loved that combination, especially because the whole approach to audio throughout this entire movie completely floored me. Like that actually may be my favorite thing about this whole film is the approach to audio, because you have moments where it's almost like this is like white noise. There are times where, like, the approach noise reminds me of Kenneth Anger's Invocation of My Demon Brother, where it's just that weird kind of beeping. And then, like, but then you'll have a moment where there's, like, a pop song, and then it cuts off to just, like, this layers of, like, military radio feedback, and it's, you know, at one point it's like, is that the wind screaming? Is that a baby screaming? Everything is kind of mutated, and the only other film I could think of that kind of used audio and layers like that for such a guttural, kind of just like, ooh, you cannot get comfortable, which I love, was The Exorcist, weirdly enough. I mean, I wouldn't compare these two films thematically, obviously, but just, I love it because I think a lot of people kind of take audio for granted with film. So when you see a filmmaker actually use use the audio aspect as much as the visual aspect, I think that's always exciting.
It's a really interesting observation, actually, because I hadn't thought about it, but the way they use music as well is usually on a record player or whatever, and then it's quite often interrupted by something not pleasurable.
Yeah, it's like a total, like, sort of sonic coitus interruptus. Like, you can't, because, especially, in the early section of film where they're still kind of in civilization and there's, like, pop culture and there's, like, bright candies and burgers and, everybody's kind of dressed in these nice kind of 60s, 70s sort of bright colors. And you've got the pop music that goes with that, but then all of a sudden it cuts off. There's no fading. But it doesn't feel like a butt cut either. It's like the way it's approached is really exquisite. It's really, I can see why this film probably, well, apparently a lot of his work, which is a shame, probably isn't as well known, because I find that films that really do that, other than The Exorcist, obviously, but people like some discomfort, but if you go whole hog on it, a lot of people are going to just run for the hills. And that's where we come in.
It's not intrusive, though, is it? It really works with the film, which is why I hadn't really noticed it until you started talking about it. It is a really big part of the film, but you're not fully conscious of it. But when they go through the tunnel, just the use of the end of the song, it instantly tells you we've just entered a completely different dimension. Like, what's happened here, so effective with, like, no visuals, no special effects, no nothing, just cutting off a song is actually genius when I think about it now.
Because I think that's the thing, another thing I found striking about the use of audio is that if you were describing this, like we are now, to somebody who hasn't seen it, in their mind, they might picture everything feeling very disjointed. But it's not. There's like a seamlessness. Like, there's like, like if this was a garment, you wouldn't even see the stitches on it. Like, it's that tight and that beautifully, like, integrated. And I find that's really rare. Of course, it's hard enough to find filmmakers ballsy enough to kind of do, with audio what, Ferreri's doing here. But, it's even harder to make it, make it just have that flow. Like, it's, you think of experimental music, smoothness and flow are not two synonyms you usually would probably, like, use to describe it.
This movie really took me down a rabbit hole, too. I was looking in the opening credits, and there's a reference to Richard Teitelbaum's In Tune. And so I started looking up who is Richard Teitelbaum, and took me down this whole path of experimental music, and that In Tune was this whole thing that was created with, like, a Moog synthesizer and an EEG machine. I'm just like, whoa, what is happening here? And just started listening to some of his work, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So I'm like, okay, here's a whole new thing that I need to explore, this whole Richard Teitelbaum connection. And I'm wondering if maybe that's the noises that we're hearing at the beginning, the hum is maybe from that. But again, I'm not as familiar with what he had done to know where he comes into play.
That makes sense, because the whole Moog thing, like with the Kenneth Anger short, like a lot of that, I think that was pretty much Mick Jagger just completely noodling on a Moog. A lot of people hate that soundtrack because they're like, I love the images. This music is making me want to claw my eyes out, which of course means I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, but it makes sense because there are elements where there's definitely like a Moog. I miss the Moog, like you could get just some amazing noises from a Moog, and and sometimes it could be a fun danceable one, and sometimes it's like, yeah, I mean, there's small animals exploding because you just hit a note on that Moog.
I just want to go back now and study every single sound effect in this bloody film. You've opened the door, Heather. You've done something.
Oh, I know. Like, I think it would be fun as hell to do like a real just kind of deep dive. Like, cause I think I remember Chuck telling me that, I think it was in this book that was actually about seduction and advertising in the 70s, but they actually had a whole chapter on The Exorcist, and they actually broke down, like, okay, this is when they recorded sounds from a slaughterhouse, and this is bees, and this, all of these. And I'm like, God, that would be so fun to do for this film, because there is a lot going on.
There's so much to unpack just within the first 10 minutes of this film, because there's the opening credits, which we were talking about. It's like, who are these people? What's going on? Why are these faces here? And then we've got the woman on the kind of like a newsreel, and she's talking about this yellow card for which means plague. But everybody in this cafe who's watching this seems absolutely happy and normal, nothing really bad going on. And then the program continues, and it talks about, like, I don't know if it's a war, but they're talking about this 50-year treaty that was broken and all of these things going on. And we've got our couple there just eating and having a nice chat, having a nice day. And the world is going on normally. They go to a grocery store. Everything seems fine there. We have an announcement of, here's the latest pop hit by so-and-so. And it's this really kind of, bubblegum pop thing going on. And it's like, okay, cool. And then, once they get in that car and they start going, that absolutely amazing vehicle. I mean, it's like a souped-up golf cart or something. It's like if Jeep made a golf cart, they would make it look like this. And then them going through that tunnel and the world changes. And it's like, wow, even before the world ends, all of this stuff to unpack is it's fantastic.
Well, I love that everybody just seems so bloody blasé about the end of the world. In the first sort of and even after that, everyone's just really kind of nonchalant and unaffected about the fact that, even when the couple go through the tunnel and meet this weird scene on the other side, they just don't even, it's great. It's got such a weird vibe. Only parts of it, obviously not what happens after they meet that scene at the end of the tunnel, remind me a little bit of Lindsay Anderson's Oh Lucky Man, in the fact that these absurd situations happen and people don't react. They act like everything is completely normal. And it has a bit of a vibe like that to it, I think.
The thing I found kind of striking about Dora, like our main female character, is that she's eating a lot of candy, or she's surrounded by candy, because it's like, because for like a few minutes, I thought she was just wearing some very like mod garment that just had these weird shiny colored bubbles on it, because it's the late 60s, early 70s Italy. I think everybody dresses really nice, and then they get stopped, and she's like, "Oh, it's ropes of candy."
Yeah, I know.
Like draped in candy.
Fashion goals. That is ultimate fashion goals, isn't it?
Oh, I know. I'm like, man, you couldn't really do that with like a Chico stick over here or what.
And what is going on with that sucker that she's eating? Because it looks like, I keep looking at that and I'm like, that looks like Frankenstein's head, but there's no image on it. Just the shape of it. It looks like the bolts coming out and all this. I don't feel like I'm reading too much into that. I'm just like, that looks like Frankenstein that she's just gnawing on when the guys come up and they're like, hey, have some J&B because it's...
Oh, yeah. I was really happy when the J&B came out because it's like the end of the world, but they've still got J&B.
That sucker was so weird looking, though. I mean, I was like, that might be the most science fiction thing in this movie, is that sucker.
She's so childlike, though, Dora. When you first meet her with the sweets and everything, she's like a little child. You don't really see her as this fully formed sexual woman. She's a very strange character.
Yeah, no, there was definitely such a kind of almost like, I hate using this word in terms of adults, but like an innocence, and they both kind of have that, but Dora more so. But also, she seems like, even early on, kind of retrospectively, seems to have, I think, a better gut instinct with situations than Cino, because it's like when these men pull them over, one of them just meets her asking, like, oh, are you a virgin? And she's looking at him like, what the why? Why are you asking me that? And it's like, and meanwhile, Chino's like, oh no, I don't have any VD. Like he's fine with it.
With this dead person on what looks like a dead kid or what was that little doll thing? Was it supposed to be a child? And asking these questions with these bodies on the floor. And Chino's just going along with it like, oh yeah, this is totally normal.
And this is after they've seen a bus full of dead kids. they're still driving along. They see that bus, and I'm like, oh, the bus is empty. And then when they go around, it's like, oh, no, here's the driver. Here's all these dead kids in here. And I'd be freaking out. And they're just like, okay, and get back on the car, and off they go.
Keep eating my lolly.
He's more thrilled about helicopters than he is about anything else.
I know, he is very childlike. It reminds me of, I don't know if either of you have ever seen The Good Life from British TV. It was a sitcom that ran here in the late 70s with Richard Pryor and Felicity Kendall. And Richard Pryor decides he's going to go off and he's going to come out of the rat race and he's going to live naturally. But he just does that in a normal suburban house. And then the posh neighbours are always just think they're freaks. But it's like The Good Life Extreme Homes edition. He has that same almost like very naive, idealist view of the world with his plants and his little loincloth and everything. He's very...
When you said The Good Life, I kept thinking, that sounds so familiar. And then as soon as you said Felicity Kendall, I swear to God, Ade Edmondson's voice from The Young Ones starts screaming, bloody Felicity Kendall. Oh God, it's so nice. It's just so bloody nice.
The show is still very, it lives on in the hearts of a lot of 40-something men. So anyone tuning in here from Britain, because of Felicity Kendall. I mean, my dad used to watch that show religiously at the time, and it's all about Felicity Kendall, bless her. But a similar setup. Her character was a bit more wise, and the husband was a bit of a childish dickhead, to be honest. He was so involved in his stupid plan to, live the good life that his wife would often suffer. So there's a sort of, I'm not saying that Marco Ferreri inspired The Good Life.
I want to live in the world where that's true. Like, seriously, right? I'm just going to lie to myself and say that's true because it's too good.
It would be amazing if it were true.
So the thing is, so we have this scenario where our two protagonists are basically told to go off in the zone and find a house and quote unquote pull themselves up by the bootstraps, which I love the guy has the aside of like, what a terrible saying. Like, yeah, that's terrible. Like, we have dead children and setting the dead on fire with a flamethrower, with the bootstraps.
And the guy's like, you've had enough fun.
I know, and they take their car away. Why do they take their car away? Why are they not allowed their car? And that really upset me. I like that car, but they just kind of take their car away and give them their bags. And they're like, yeah, okay, then we'll just walk from here, like completely unaffected again.
And they took her candy.
Oh, yeah, I know. That was just rude.
But yet she got to pick a perfume. Like, I thought that was confusing. Like, we want you to smell good, but you lay off the sweets, honey.
Though I doubt she gets to use that at all because it ends up in his museum very quickly.
I can't wait to talk about the museum.
So yeah, they find this house, and the house was owned by Marco Ferreri, so he's there dead out on the front stoop. And there's graffiti on the house. It says something like Love Philip or something like that, and I'm just like, I don't know what that is supposed to mean. I'm trying to figure that out. And they go in, they're making themselves at home, and there's a great drawing of Ferreri, and at one point, very soon thereafter, Cino is like admiring that, and he decides, yeah, I'm going to adapt that beard style. That's really good. That's for me.
Yes.
I thought it was rather sweet of Cino and Dora to bury the former house owner, but what cracks me up is they have this burial, and they've got this horn, and they start just tooting on this obnoxious, it's amazing horn, and and they're laughing. Which, I mean, in this universe, I guess, if you grab humor where you can get it, you're surrounded by the dead and plagues, you might as well giggle over the corpse of Marco Ferreri with a horn.
Which is so, literally the most Marco Ferreri thing ever.
They still have TV for a little bit, and they get to see a news report out of Rome, it looks like, which is...
That news report is great. Is that the one when they're being asked questions, and they're kind of like, it's none of your business?
Then the Pope is there, and the Pope is like, I'm so sorry, and And there's like the headless Pietà, and it almost looks like miniature work when they're going over Rome, and Rome is all destroyed. It's all in black and white. I was so glad that the Pope gets to show up in this movie.
Well, he loved the Pope, didn't he, old Marco? I don't think the Pope liked him.
Like, the first news report we see in the movie is that, like, a blonde woman, and she's holding a large cloth doll.
Yeah, that's the first face we see after all those dead faces or the black and white faces from the credits. And it's just like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's this, like, child's doll.
One of the creepiest dolls I've seen in a long time.
It is fairly creepy.
I just think it's all a little bit creepy.
But then you get the creepy, jumping ahead though, the creepy mannequin people later on as well. Seems to be like a central theme of this film, and I'm not entirely sure what it means. This seems to be the theme of the episode, and then this happens. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but it happens.
I know, it almost seems like maybe a commentary on just, I don't know, the ghoulishness of facsimiles of humanity. But yeah, so they find this amazing house, which I feel like that's good. Like, I feel like if that was me, I'd end up finding some crack house is like covered in old issues of Jugs and empty cans of Colt 45. But they find this like amazing house with this gorgeous wardrobe. I think it's pretty nice. I wouldn't mind living there.
That house is amazing, and it's right by the beach as well.
Yeah, they got lucky.
I was reading about some other Ferreri films, and it seems like the sea is one of his big things, and especially people who just kind of walk out into the ocean and kill themselves at the end. So it's like, okay. And I was kind of waiting for that with this, but luckily that doesn't happen, though something else miraculous happens.
You get the even better ending.
But there is a lot of like what the sea brings to them. And one of the first things is they think they see a dirigible, but it ends up being this huge Pepsi Cola bottle. And I love this thing, like how they're out there and they're carving SOS in the sand. Like, I don't understand what they think.
Oh, it's so good. They think they're going to be saved, and it's a fucking Pepsi bottle floating in
so
the sky.
happy about it.
Well,
and they're talking about how beautiful it is. And I'm like, okay.
Like a lovely piece of like floating pop art.
And that it says Merry Christmas on it, so they realize what day it is or whatever. They take it as now is Christmas. And I want to say, like in a little bit, I think maybe half an hour from now, we're going to get a sperm whale that washes up on the beach. And the Pepsi Cola bottle is really shaped very similarly. I don't think I'm reaching for that.
No, it is. Obviously, it doesn't have the same connotation as the sperm whale, though.
Do you think that's a little too on the nose?
Yes.
In a movie called Seed of Man, that you have a sperm whale?
This is Marco Ferreri. He didn't do subtle. He never did subtle, which is what I love about it. It's like, I'm going to have a huge, massive 10-ton sperm whale that just signifies everything that this film should mean. It must have stank as well. If you'd really been there with a washed up, nobody comments on the smell or anything. They're just all really happy to see it. In fact, they're just really happy most of the time, or Cino is, when anything occurs.
Because again, Dora having better instincts, because he's like flipping out about it. And I agree, Kat. I kept thinking about the smell too, because I'm like, God, you wouldn't be able to go near it. Oof, I can only imagine how bad that would smell.
Dora's line, though, sees it as this omen, is incredible. I love that line.
She's clearly the smarter of the two. But it's funny because then at some point we have like this foreign woman show up, and who ends up posing in front of the whale with Dora. I love that. Like, instead of posing in front of the ocean or the house or even that amazing white oxen, that poor animal, like, I felt bad for every living creature in this movie that wasn't a human being. Because, like, you see a pig get hit over the head with a stick. This white oxen's just tethered to a house. It's not fun. The sperm whale's not real, but it's dead. That's sad. And, there's that ghoulish fish.
But it becomes a perfect metaphor, though, doesn't it, for what Cino wants to do to those women.
Yeah, because it's about 40 minutes in before he finally is just like, hey, I want to have a baby. And that becomes like the through line for the entire rest of the film. Is just, I want to have a baby. And then when these strangers show up at one point who seem like they're a religious cult, the woman's got this blood red cross on her outfit, and they're all dressed with these dark coats. And the one guy, Major Devotis is his name. He reminds me of, God, I wish I could remember the actor's name. The guy in Escape from New York with that wild hair.
Tomorrow. Where'd you get the hat?
Got it from Cabby.
Oh, yeah?
Traded him.
For what?
What are you so nervous about?
You got to see the president.
Who says?
The Duke.
No, he doesn't.
Well, I'll have to tell him you said that.
Wait a minute. Why?
He's got something hidden in his clothing and the Duke wants it.
What?
I'll show you.
You'll tell me.
Cyanide capsules. The Duke don't want a dead president.
That guy, both, actually, I can completely see that. Yeah, because the general or major, or generals and majors if you're XTC, like, is so striking looking. I could be like, God, that guy, like, put him in everything with a mug like that, you know? Like, just a really effective looking person. It's even worse for Dora, though, because now Chino's already got it in his head that he's like, I want to have a child. She's clearly not comfortable with it. And then you've got these people saying, well, it's your duty. We have to repopulate the earth.
Why isn't she pregnant is one of the first questions out of their mouth.
Oh, yeah, they come in asking these really intrusive questions about her capacity to breed. And, you know, just kind of flock into this house, and they're really, really intrusive.
Yeah, they come in, they're giving orders. They're like, hey, we like this museum you've got going here, Chino. You should be the curator of the museum. And he just takes this as like such a duty then. It's like even later on in the film, they're like, why don't we move over to this other house? And he's like, no, I have to take care of the museum.
Yeah, the museum that nobody visits. It's just him. Pregnancy. And to bring that up seems to be a recurring theme in the films of Marco Ferreri. It comes up in The Ape Woman. I'll try and not give any spoilers, but The Ape Woman, it's like the catalyst for the end of the film. You've got Bye Bye Monkey. It comes up in that. The Future of Woman is like a kind of weird triangle with this infertile couple and a pregnant woman. And he never really used pregnancy in a positive way. It could often lead to the end of somebody, or it would cause jealousy, or it would, you know, and it comes up in a few of his other films as well. They're just the ones off the top of my head where it's like a main theme. But it was never like a positive thing in his films. Whereas kind of conventionally pregnancy is like the hope, isn't it? But for Marco Ferreri, it never was hope. It was always about destruction or more negative elements, which is really interesting.
And for me in this movie, it's about choice. And Dora doesn't want to have a kid. And Chino just keeps forcing it on her until he literally forces himself on her. And it's just like, dude, she's got a choice. She doesn't want to have a baby. Just leave it alone.
It's this ownership, though. You get it in the Future is Woman, this idea of owning somebody's body because of their capacity to have a baby. He called himself 50% misogynist and 50% feminist. Marco Ferreri
there goes that trolling again.
Very, very sympathetic to women. I think that's one of the things I really love about his films. Even in things like The Ape Woman, he would often show how men exploit women, or how they are childish or useless, or, you know, and he would show these aspects of couple culture in Italy, which was in the 60s and before that, very, very patriarchal society, awash with Catholicism. Like, people couldn't even get divorced till 1970. And he did always seem to be on the side of the woman, or at least that's my take on his films anyway. He did seem very sympathetic to what women have to put up with. So I see Dora as just an extension of those other characters. She has this husband who wants her to do things, like it's the same with the ape woman actually, wants her to do things for him, and her place in that house becomes this object that he wants her to become a breeding vessel. And then when the third wheel comes in, he very quickly changes allegiance because the other woman's willing to be inseminated by. Like, that's his whole thing. It's just inseminating, and she ceases to become a wife or a girlfriend.
Dora, especially, because like from the beginning, it's like, oh, she's this very, seems like a waif, like this childlike creature, but then she's smart. She's the main one you see gathering vegetables, gardening, killing an animal. Like, she is the hunter.
Oh, so I love how she becomes kind of more pragmatic and more of the aggressive one in the relationship, whereas Chino's just there with his fucking radios and his paintings and his medicinal herbs, and he's a bit of a flake, really, isn't he?
Well, in the museum, if I can point out, I love the fact that one of the first things he puts in the museum is this, like, 7th centuries old wheel of Parmesan cheese. And Dora's like, maybe we should eat this? Which would be, yeah. And he's like, no, it must be put in the museum. We're going to go out to this post-apocalyptic beachside to see this 7th centuries old wheel of cheese and a fridge.
That third wheel woman I do mention is Annie Girardot. I talked about the ape woman because she is the ape woman who is literally an ape woman. It's wonderful. And she's also in his Dillinger is Dead as well. So she worked with him a few times. All different characters. She's like the Sivius maid in Dillinger is Dead, but she's such a wonderful actress. I absolutely love her. She kind of turns up out of nowhere and just imposes herself into this, and you don't even know why. Like, why is she doing it? Where has she come from? Why is she doing this? But she very quickly sort of even gets into bed with them.
I mostly know her as the mother from The Piano Teacher, where she was just fantastic.
I mean, she's such an incredible actress. She really was. I particularly love her in this because she's, I don't know, like, she's just so horrid. I wasn't sad what happened to her, put it that way.
We're coming up to my favorite part in the movie with what happens to her.
One of the things I really like about him showing these people around this museum is that he's got images from 2001: A Space Odyssey on the wall, which I'm just like, wow, that's really current. That's the year before this movie was shot, or the year that it was shot. And then he also has a Kodak Viewmaster in his museum, and I love that one of the pictures on the Viewmaster is this protest picture that says "Murder in Vietnam," and it's got all these baby parts. So it's like you can have this sci-fi fantasy of a better world, or here's what the world really was at the time.
It's the 2001 Space Odyssey, because apparently he went and saw it and asked his effects guy, go and see it, with like none of the budget. And then,
right.
And then
I want effects just like that.
Yeah, it was like, wow, we haven't really got the budget. And he's like, don't make it shit then.
And you mentioned Dillinger is Dead, and I love when the one woman that's with these religious fanatics, let's call them, when she tries to steal a clock, Major Devotis pulls out the same gun from Dillinger
that crazy polka dot gun. It's like a gun that's painted red with little polka dots on. It's so nice little nod to himself. I think he consciously puts these little references in, though, which is great. It's like the reason why everyone should just watch all of his films, because they're just so connected, even though, they seem to go all over the place in terms of ludicrousy. There is something there that binds them all together.
Dillinger is Dead is the only movie of his that is readily available, because that came out on Criterion, I think.
Yeah, it's a really sad state of affairs. I just, like I said, I don't understand what the issue is unless it's just the fact that it's the comedy aspect and people just tend to look down on that. I don't know, but I know there was a box set a while ago and that goes for quite a lot of money now of a few of his films on DVD. We saw Arrow actually put out Le Grand Boeuf. So Arrow did that a while ago and it's a lovely transfer. And I was kind of hoping that would be the start of more, but no, nothing. I don't understand it.
So yeah, with this third wheel, this third woman, and yeah, I love that she shows up right after the whale shows up, and Dora's like, yeah, this is a bad omen, and then almost immediately, here comes this woman with these massive sunglasses, and I was really curious because it's like almost right away, she's got this long hair, and I was like, oh wow, was she there that long for her hair to grow out? But no, it's a wig, so just kind of showing us that she's duplicitous.
Yeah, her feminine wiles. Just her pulling out, like, so, you know, a long, traditionally feminine hairstyle and being very sweet to Chino.
She's a sneak, though, isn't she? She is a total sneak, which is why I love her. But she's like a bit of a pantomime villain as well. When she brings it, like, gets into their bed with them, and she's all like, yeah, I'd have your baby. And poor Dora, who's all kind of under the covers, listening to them having sex. And at that point, you just think, fucking Chino, like, get your act together. And then the next day, she's bringing up the coffee and she's got that wig on. She's all, like, dressed up like she's going to town or something. And, you know, she's just so sneaky and sly. I love her.
Well, I love that they watch her bathe. Like, we see this woman enter the house, and then, like, the next shot, she's, like, bathing, and they're just, like, standing there. Like, okay. I'm with you completely. I love how obvious she is, because she literally, when she gets in bed, tries to give a massage to Dora. Like, that is the classic, like, erotic film menage a trois trope, usually, of, like, ooh, you look so tense. Let me give you a massage, you know?
She's into it.
But Dora's not having any of it. It's just like, Yeah, God, Chino's really, you know, poor Chino, because, like, the more I think about it now, more, I'm like, man, fucking Chino. Like,
he is, he's such a sap. It's a thing that tends to come up in Marco Ferreri films, though, that people are, or men, sorry, not people, saps. Like, one of my favourite films by him is The Man with the Balloons, where Marcello Mastroianni stars as this guy who becomes obsessed with how much air he can put into a balloon, and he wants to discover the perfect point to fill a balloon before it bursts. And his girlfriend or his fiancée is Catherine Spack, and he totally ignores her all the way through the thing because he's just obsessed with this fucking balloon, and you're just like, put the fucking balloon down. But he reminds me of Chino, this like obsession. Men often get obsessions in his films, and they become very self-destructive obsessions. Like the Grand Boeuf is basically 4 guys go to a house to eat themselves to death. It's absolutely glorious, but that is their plan. They're just so bored they're going to eat themselves to death. So I see that connection between Chino and some of his other characters. Chino's on the sweeter end of the scale. Some of them are sweet, and some of the guys that he has aren't so sweet. They're a bit nastier and more. But even Dillinger Is Dead is totally about obsession, self-destructive. I don't want to say what it's about.
That she ends up giving him a pacifier as a gift. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
But this leads, as I mentioned, this is, oh my God, the swerve that we get with this. I was clapping. I was like, oh my God, yes, because, yeah, so we have her, and I love that she puts her wig on a tree, because she doesn't want to get her wig dirty, I realize now. And even though that's no way to treat a hat, ma'am, do not put your nice wig on a tree, come on. But she ends up trying to bone, not, wrong choice of words after talking about menage a trois, I'm sorry. She tries to brain Dora with, like, a bone, and Dora, who, you know, Dora, up to this point, other than beating the pig, you're just like, oh no, poor Dora. And oh my god, no, Dora turns into a total badass. She beats the shit out of her. She strangles her to death. And what I love, because, in a Hollywood movie, or even, I think in an American movie, you would have Dora have, a freak out, oh my god, I killed somebody. No, she's kicking the body.
Then when she goes in for the kick, he's like, you just want to cheer. Because prior to that, she sat there kind of meditating with her little wind chime, and this horrible interloper just whacks her on the head.
Oh my god, and then you think it can't get any better. Dora is so awesome. She grabs an axe, and I'm like, oh shit, is this about to go Miss 45? What is she about to do? She hacks the woman's leg off, fucking cooks it, and serves it to Cino. Oh my God.
The dinner scene is one of my favourite things in Italian film ever. Just the way she serves up that fucking leg to an unsuspecting Cino's like, oh, this meat is so tender. What is it? She's just like, just eat it. And you just think, go Dora.
This may be my favorite Italian cannibal movie now.
It's great, isn't it? It's one of those things you don't want to give it away, but I've always you should check out the work of Marco Ferreri, You want to see some really interesting cannibalism?
I mean, this is another one of his themes.
Yeah, he uses it in a few films, but eating in general as well has a massive significance in his films, like I said, Le Grand Bouffe, but people having lavish dinners and just a whole thing of eating and consumption seemed to be a huge thing for him. He was a larger man, and I think he liked his food, but he used it in his films. I think it was Claude Chabrol said in an interview once about some directors who like to feed their actors and others don't. Claude Chabrol loved to feed his actors. Set me on this thing of thinking about directors you like to feed. It's something I'm really weirdly interested in. I might do a book on it one day. I've got an outline somewhere. Ferreri definitely liked to feed his actors, and it always had whenever you see people eating films, it always has some sort of symbolism. And for him, I don't know, what the symbolism always differed, but it was always very significant when it came up.
Sometimes it's purification, and in this one, it just feels like it's a total revenge thing, which I absolutely love.
Nobody who makes pate this good can be all bad.
That's a really good point, especially because we see eating becomes kind of even more prevalent throughout, where we keep seeing them having this ricotta, and Dora eating the ricotta with her hands. I love because they get to the house, and she's like, I want to stay here, and he's like, oh, I'm the museum, and she's eating, and she's like, fine, go. And I'm like, yes, girl, go let him have fun with this 7 centuries old wheel of cheese, and you stay in this cool place.
It's really interesting, though, because they're supposed to, kind of be living off the land and all this, but they don't seem to be without, which is another interesting thing. They never seem to be without anything. In fact, they seem to live this, apart from the interlopers and the weird strangers who burst in, this quite idyllic existence. So they suddenly inherit this really bourgeois house and all these beautiful things, and they seem to have a abundance of food, which is interesting. You'd expect it's the opposite to how you'd expect dystopian sci-fi, we did last August at the Hotel Ozone. It's the antithesis of that. Nobody's struggling. They seem to have an abundance of everything.
Yeah, and at least the cow makes it out alive in this movie.
I was worried about that, because anytime you see a live animal in 70s cinema, especially oxen and cows don't fare too well in this decade. And that one, I was like, thank God,
Yeah, end of August at the Ozone Hotel. Oh, it is not good for animal lovers.
Ferreri loved animals, though, didn't he? He was a vet, or he trained to be a vet, but animals seem to play a really important part in his films as well, especially in The Ape Woman and Goodbye Monkey. You've got a guy adopting a chimp, and then you've got the significance of the whale in this. They just seem to come up time and time again as well.
And there's that weird thing when they are moving to this other house and the whale, it's in the background, but you can see what looks like all these seagulls on it. And then a little bit later, Chino's like, oh, the plague is over. The plague is over. And I was just like, okay, what does that mean? But I think it's like the whale has been stripped of all of its meat and now it's just the bones. And now you have this huge whale skeleton on the beach, which was just like, wow, that's actually really cool. That's an awesome prop.
The whole thing's awesome, though. You have that. It's the same in Goodbye Monkey, where you have a giant ape.
Yeah, it's like King Kong has fallen off the World Trade Center before De Laurentiis did it.
Yeah, so it's like, it's just this huge, massive animal. And that whale, it looks far bigger than an actual whale as well, which I'm sure is deliberate.
Goodbye Monkey was after the Dino De Laurentiis King Kong. My bad.
Marco Ferreri did everything, though. I won't accept that. He did everything first. Deserves to be recognised for this.
I don't want any of those, King Kong heads coming after me with, corrections.
God, they're worse than Ghostbuster fans.
I know, God. Right? The flame wars will start and we'll just never survive.
Oh, God, don't make King Kong a woman. Oh, Lord. I'll get so mad. They're like, not my King Kong. You killed my childhood.
Hashtag.
Oh, I see. You're going to have an SJW ape now. Oh,
right. Here comes the reviews on iTunes.
I know, Mike. You get so political on this show.
I liked Mike until he got so political about the ape from King Kong.
It used to be good, and then you just ruined it all with politics. Just so political now. You've just ruined it. Plus, I'm men bashing again as well, which I got told off for on the Rosemary's Babies episode. I was being too mean to Guy, and now I'm being mean to Chino. It's like I'm a horrible person.
Chino deserves it, man. If you're a man listening to this and you're like, these women are mean to Chino, yes. But
I kind of like Chino, but then he fucks somebody in bed with Dora, and I like Dora more, so yeah, and his bloody cheese and his museum and everything, while she's actually out doing stuff. But he's also kind of sweet, weirdly endearing as well. In a strange way, but also entirely useless, apart from all he wants to do is inseminate this woman. And then you think, what's going to happen if he inseminates her? She's just going to be left doing everything. Well, he carries on cataloguing grass.
Or making that weird art project out of all the plastic people from the second house. Oh yeah, I'll take all these plastic people and put them here by the whale skeleton.
No, I would agree. I mean, Chino, through a good chunk of the movie, I liked him. And I was like, yeah, because he does have sort of this, like, almost naivete about him. But as the film goes on, if you're going to have sex with somebody that's not your partner, don't do it next to them.
I know, in the same bed. It's just so... But yet still, you kind of feel sympathetic for him. It's weird.
The more he kind of pushes her, though, it's kind of like, wow, you really don't see her as a person, and that's problematic. I hate that word, but you know what I mean. And,
yeah, she's just a vessel for him she's a field for him to plant his seed.
But on top of that, even though Dora doesn't really say it explicitly, the whole time I really, and maybe this is me putting my own projection on this, is I really get the feeling she's probably like, why would I want to bring a kid into this world? Like, look at everything we've seen. Look at everything that humanity has made a mess of on this planet. Like, why would I want to bring a child just to see them die on a bus or have their corpse burned alive in a field by a bunch of, jaded officers?
For Chino, though, it's all about him being the savior of mankind, isn't it? It's all about his ego. And him, like he's the chairman or the curator of this museum that nobody will ever visit. It's all about him and all about his ego, which is another reason why he's a bit shitty.
And I don't think he would be happy with just one baby. It sounds like he wants, 100, 200 million babies.
Yeah, when he's going on about sperm numbers. Oh.
I just pictured a bunch of babies with that Amish beard.
I mean, he's so shitty that he ends up slipping her a Mickey, and we have kind of an echo of the former dining scene with a new dining scene where he's feeding her and ends up drugging her and then has sex with her. And it's like, okay, yeah, that, to your early point, that's problematic, that we have this essentially a rape going on in this movie. And then he's super happy when she's nauseous the next day or a few days later. And he's just like, I know why you're nauseous. You're pregnant with my baby. And just him going fucking apeshit on the beach, running around and touching her stomach and going, 102 million babies. I've inseminated you. I've inseminated you. He's just like going fucking crazy.
Well, and there's like the repetition of like Dora going into like a crouching position, almost like a scared animal, because she does that earlier when like the group of like black clad sort of cult members or government members or whoever are there. She does that same thing.
Right. And the major comes over and throws this coat over her, and then she seems to recover from it. But yeah, it's the exact same crouching position that she gets in while he's running around like a maniac screaming about how he inseminated her.
Inseminato!
Inseminato!
But this comes up to, I think, what maybe one of the best climaxes I've seen in recent, maybe in any film I've ever seen.
I had to rewind this 3 times.
It's amazing. It really is. It's like, you can imagine the script. How are we going to finish this then? Wow.
I want the movie to end with a big explosion.
I mean, not since Forbidden Zone have I seen a better use of explosions to end a movie. Because that's, how else, right?
I picture Ferreri typing on the paper, in Italian, and then they explode.
It's so good. And you don't even get end credits. It's just they explode, then we get a minute of just sort of white noise mixed in with natural sounds, which is kind of all throughout. Again, oh my God, the audio in this film's amazing. And then that's it. And you're just sitting there with your jaw hanging open going, okay. Like, they exploded.
It's great, though. It is so good.
The white smoke just going along the beach. Yeah.
I still remember the first time I saw it just being like, whoa, what did I just watch? What was that?
I think such an ending would make bad films better. Because, I think if Terms of Endearment had ended with, the whole cast exploding, I would have been like, wow, that movie was boring, but that ending was brilliant. That was such a good ending.
Yeah, you tell me that all the Little Women explode at the end, I'm watching Greta Gerwig's version.
Yes, I would be in that theater right now.
Hell yes.
We sound like remember that SCTV? Kat, I don't know if you ever got to see this Canadian-American show from the 80s called SCTV. It was like a comedy sketch show, but they had these 2 guys that were movie reviewers, and they would rate movies on how many explosions they had.
But I'll tell you a film I did like. Werner Rainer Fastbinders, the 3rd generation. I like that one a whole lot. A whole bunch of people got blowed up good, and that one blowed up real good.
Well, I personally don't like too many of those films coming out of Europe, but I'll tell you, I do have a favorite director over there, and that's Michelangelo Antonioni.
Oh, yeah.
You see that movie, Zabriskie Point?
Yeah.
You remember how it ended?
Yeah, everything at the end blowed up.
Blowed up good.
Blowed up real good.
Real good.
Yeah. You know that one movie he made, though, I didn't like was Blow Up.
No, I didn't like that neither. Nothing blowed up in it.
I don't know why they call a movie Blow Up and nothing blows up.
No.
I got my money back on that one.
Well, I don't blame you.
This would definitely have a 10 out of 10.
Let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back with an interview with Nicoletta Ercole, the producer of La Lucida Folio de Marco Ferreri, also known as Marco Ferreri, Dangerous But Necessary. It is a 2017 documentary about Ferreri. I highly recommend it. It was absolutely fantastic. This is going to be a short interview. Ms. Ercole gets a little busy, or at least her house gets a little busy towards the end, so just be patient and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Steven Seagal. That's right, Steven Seagal. And for the past 40 years, in between barbecuing oxen and roasting boar for my insatiable appetite, I never miss an episode of Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid commentaries. Ain't that right, Johnny?
Hi, I'm Dr. Action.
Hi, and I'm the Kick-Ass Kid.
When I'm not watching action films, I'm usually polishing my gun while looking at a bat.
And when I'm not watching action films, I'm normally outside with a harpoon killing puppies.
But usually you can find us both watching 80s, 90s action films. You could follow us on Twitter, Dr. Action Kickass.
You can find us on our main page, which is dractionkickass.blogspot.com.
You can also find us on iTunes and TalkShoe.
Yes, every week we do a commentary on an 80s and 90s action classic, and where we can, we also provide the film so that you can watch along with it.
This podcast explodes.
In 1985, a curious phenomenon occurred. The Twilight Zone returned to television, featuring all new tales of mystery and imagination from the minds of Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, George R.R. Martin, and Stephen King. Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast, looks back at that land of shadow and substance and re-examines the groundbreaking successor to Rod Serling's legacy. Featuring new interviews with the show's creators and cast, Dreams for Sale can be found on iTunes and at twilightzone85.com. Dreams for Sale. We'll be waiting for you in the Twilight Zone.
You know, the girl from that...
Yes, I know
show
exactly.
on that.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
She has the hair.
The hair was, but it was different, and she has the lips. She has the lips with the. Okay,
Yeah.
wait. She was just okay. You've seen her in a million movies. You know
but the one that
we're talking about the exact same person. We don't always suck as bad as this, but listen to me, Chris Gore, and Anthony Ray Bench on the Film Threat Podcast.
You got questions. Sometimes we have the answers.
Hi, this is Andrew from We Hate Movies, and you're listening to The Projection Booth. If you feel like laughing after listening to some serious film discussion, head on over to our show, WHMPodcast.com. Every Tuesday, a new episode drops, us ragging on bad movies, whereas the good folks here at The Projection Booth are talking about good, party, cinema-related stuff. Go here for the cinema. Come to us for the laughs afterwards. We Hate Movies every Tuesday.
I would love to know a little bit more about you, and especially how you got into costume design and into the Italian film industry.
So I started in the beginning of 1970, 72 exactly. All my life I loved fashion and cinema and costumes. And when I was really young, with my best friend, Barbara Mastroianni, the daughter of Marcello Mastroianni, all the Saturday evening in the villa of Mastroianni on the Appia in Rome, we rented the two movies that we really loved: Gattopardo by Visconti and Gone with the Wind, because the costumes of the period was so fantastic and we love it. So we start to make some drawing, and as soon as we finish the school, I start to work as assistant for free, of course, as PA with some costume designer. And one of those was the best costume designer in the world, Piero Tosi, that just 2 years ago, the Academy Award gave to him the Oscar to the career, because it's really the best costume designer, the teacher of some of us, as Milena Canonero, as Gabriella Pescucci, as some other costume designers. So I discovered the show business, and I can't leave it anymore. I can't live without it. I can't live, because it's really my life. So then I start to. My first American movie was in 1976 in Los Angeles and San Diego. I was considered a B movie. For me, it was a Z movie, not B movie, because it was really awful. The story was just after Jaws by Spielberg, and it was called Tentacles. The director was an Italian-American, Oliver Hellman. And the star, the talent was great, because John Huston, Henry Fonda, Shelley Winters, Claude Akins, Bo Hopkins. It was so fantastic. And I was just 22 years old. And I was really, I can't understand why they just called me, because I was the only one in Italy that speaks English. So that was really great, because the one of the producer was Peter Shepard, a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, that then is dead, unfortunately, many years ago. And so he hired Italians, because it was an Italian-American production. So, you know, the production must be half and half. And the voice of costume designer was empty, because the costume designer that they chose didn't speak it very good English. And so I started to work. And that time, when I came back, I met Marco Ferreri. There was preparing a great movie with Marcello Mastroianni and Gérard Depardieu. It's called, in American, it's called Bye Bye Monkey. And in France, it's called Rêve de Singe. In Italian, Ciao Maschio. So we started shooting in New York. And then we came back in Rome, in Cinecittà. And from that movie, I never left Marco, and Marco never left me. And after when he died, his wife was one of my best friends, Jacqueline. She was half Canadian, half French. And we try for all the last period of Jacqueline's life to keep very fresh the remembrance of Marco Ferreri, because he anticipates really a lot of things. For instance, if you see the movie with Christophe Lambert, I Love You, he's anticipated what is the virtual love. You know what I mean? The virtual love, because it was a key holder. It was a little doll. In Italian, we call portachiavi. That say if you call her it, she answer, I love you. And he fall in love with these things, you know. This movie was 40 years ago, so it's incredible. It was really the man of the future, the director of the future.
What was it like to work with Mr. Ferreri?
It was great, because you can, you know, it's completely different. When I work with Americans, you know exactly what you have to do. You know exactly the script, you know, and the breakdown, and you know exactly what we are going to do. With Marco was an happening, always an happening, because I teach to my assistant to say, if you want to work with me and with Marco Ferreri, you have to preview what is unpreview. It's impossible to think that what you have done, we are going to make it. So you have to be free and able to do everything he asks. He asks to us, you know. It was a really very amusing, very exciting, very exciting.
I love the work that you did on Story of Piera.
Story di Piera.
Yeah, the way that you used costumes to help age the actresses through so many different times.
This is what I really a bond, you know, because Isabelle Huppert was great in that movie. It's really great because you know how she changed. At the beginning, she looks like a teenager, 12, 13, then like 30, and then 40. And I laughed because we start with the 50s, and then the 60s, and then the 70s, and we finish in the 80s. And also, Hanna Schygulla was so great in that movie. I really loved to wear her with crazy things, because she was so crazy. She was so unusual. She was so transgressive woman. So we put together a lot of styles of period costumes and mixed together like a miscellaneous. I love this, yes.
How was it working on Come Sono Buoni I Bianchi? All of the global costumes that you had to work on, especially the African costumes.
Yeah. That was so funny because Renato Salvatori, maybe you don't know who he was. He was a great actor, one of the favorite actors of Luchino Visconti, and he knew if not a fabric. How you say? En français, on dit usine. Comment si dice fabbrica? Oh, okay. A great place, not so far from Rome, that they sell all the fabrics of the African fabrics. And so I've been there. I got a lot of materials, and then I worked. I break it down. I call a major with me to make it age oldest, what I mean, to ruin, to leave the material like an old piece of material. And that we made all the costumes because we didn't know all these people, because all the people that you see in the movie, Marco Ferreri asked to the governor of Mauritania one passport for all those people, 250 persons. So I prepare all this in Italy, and then I've been in Agadir in Morocco, and I called the Moroccan people that helped me to break it down, to make them all older. You know what I mean?
Right. We would tend to say to distress the materials, to age them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's.
How did the documentary about Mr. Ferreri come about?
For me, half of my professional life, it belonged to Marco, because he teach me a lot of things. It teach me to work in something, that it's not decided from the beginning. This is very exciting to create. To create my work, our work. It's a work. It's the most important thing is to create. It's artistic work. So if you can do anything, you are so happy. So I decided that in 2017 was 20 years that Marco was dead, and I said a lot of people forgot him. The young people, so they must to watch now her cinematography, because it's something so incredible, modern, incredible, up to date, And that's why I decided to do this. I choose this friend of mine that was Selma the lawyer. She's American-Italian, now she's a journalist, but at that time was a poor woman in New York that I discovered. And so I asked to Selma, what do you think? You feel that you can do a movie about Marco, a docu film about him? I help you. I know almost all it's belong to Marco. Let's try. And I must say the truth. Roberto Benigni was the first. Roberto and I were very friends. And I said to Roberto, what do you think if I involved in this? I don't know, because I have no money. I have to, And Roberto said, if you want, I can help you. I don't want you help me, because otherwise I feel, I want to do in a normal way. And he said, no, you have to. And I will be in the movie. Okay, darling. And it's incredible because unfortunately you can't understand really what he says in the poem that he made for Marco, or you can understand it.
Yeah, I watched it with the subtitles. It's a fantastic poem.
Yeah, but it's incredible. In Italian, it's something. It's really something very special because it's a lot all something that is typical of Marco and was really typical of that period. In that period, all the most important directors was Fellini, Ferreri, Bertolucci. So it was a kind of strange war between them, So it's very amusing.
This wasn't your first documentary. You made one on Mr. Ferretti as well, correct?
Yes. 10 years ago. With Dante was the same thing. The title is Dante Ferretti, Scenography Italiano. That means Dante Ferretti, Italian production designer. And also that one, because in that period, I decided to tell what the so excellent Italian artist, and was like a collier that begin with Dante, because Dante is my best friend. We start together. We've been in America together. We have the same agent in Los Angeles. We start all and Dante is older than me. But anyway, we work together a lot. And so we decided to go in LA together and And I think he's really a genius. I think it's so great. It's a big artist, really. And so I started with him, but in this collier was involved one with with Dante Ferretti, the other one was Dante Spinotti. Dante Spinotti is one of the best light. It's like oh my God! It was Dante Ferretti, Milena Canonero, Dante Spinotti, Pietro Scalia, the editor, and Ennio Morricone. Those should be the five most important talent and Italian artists.
How did you decide to work with Selma dell'Olio as a director for this? Was this her first time directing a documentary?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's incredible. And now she's making another movie. Another producer, a friend of mine, called her to make another movie, a docu-film that's about Fellini. It's incredible, huh? A Star is Born. A Star is Born. As you can hear, I'm in the middle of the country with a dog. In this. So just in case I'm going to make another one, I will call you to tell you what it's about it. I know, because I have an idea. I'm start just the pre-prep. And it could be something very interesting because I'm sure that you like it, because it's about the four most important artists of cinema and opera and theater in the last 50 years in Italy.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful talking with you.
Really? My English is awful, darling. I lost. Oh yeah.
Your English is much better than my Italian. It was probably 25 years ago.
It's a very easy answer. It's a very easy answer. Everybody says it.
All right, we were back and we were talking about The Seeds of Man and still trying to recover from that ending. Oh my God.
Please, I'm hoping that we're doing this episode almost as like a ritual act of magic where like some really great company is going to be like, you know what? Kat and Mike are right. Let's get all of these films on Blu-ray, get them remastered, get them out in the public. Because think about it, Ape, like that horrible 70s movie, Ape, like it's like A*P*E, where the gorilla flips off the camera, and that's literally the best part of the movie. That is on Blu-ray. That is on Blu-ray. Seed of Man is not on Blu-ray. Fucking Dracula 2000 is probably out on Blu-ray. This is not. That is not right.
No, it's not right. We do need more Marco Ferreri. We definitely need more Marco Ferreri. I just think a lot of it is because he's underseen, I guess. People don't tend to make the effort to track his films down, or, you know, you have that kind of snobbery as well. He wasn't somebody who kind of played into the whole auteur thing or played up to the critics. He just did his own thing, and he was such a fucking troll as well, amazingly, which I love. So he's kind of cast out of that inner circle of masters, but I rate him right up there. With Elio Petri as well, he was another one who kind of got pushed out. He didn't play the game either. I think both of those, were seen as going a little bit too far because they weren't, you know, they were critical of everything. They weren't necessarily on one side or the other. And it's just, I just find it so frustrating, so fucking frustrating that, I don't know, I guess home video companies sell things that they know will sell. It's like Marco Ferreri isn't really a quote-unquote name, is he? So
they're still making movies about this guy, and he even shows up in that Godard Mon Amour. Actually, there's a scene of them shooting Seeds of Man in that. So he's a known entity in some circles, but I would like him to be known in a much larger circle.
Yeah, he's totally a known entity in the more like art house circles, but for whatever reason, he's not seen as marketable as someone like Fellini or Antonioni or Pasolini, or, you know, he's not in that top tier. But there's so much of that in Italian film, especially from the 60s, especially in Italian comedy. It's a real wealth of incredible film. A lot of it satire based that just remains languishing in fan subbed limbo because nobody wants to take that chance and put it out there.
You brought up a really, really good point that I don't know if a lot of people really think about it, but there are genres of film that just historically always get ignored by critics. And with that respect, you know, having kind of like a serious respect for them. And comedy has always been right next to like erotica and horror as far as being treated.
Well, it's even one step below horror in a way, even though those two genres are just so closely connected. And they're both genres that explore things like culture and society and fears and anxiety. There, horror tends to have a community, whereas comedy's just, I don't know, it's out there, isn't it? There are very few comedic directors that have actually made it, like Billy Wilder, Preston Sturges, Charlie Chaplin, you know. But outside of that, it's like comedy's seen as the redneck cousin. People don't seriously do comedy. Like, I seriously do comedy, but people rarely do. They're like not interested, or it hasn't got the prestige, has it, that something like art house or even genre film has.
That's never made sense to me, because I think it's infinitely harder to find something that makes somebody laugh than it is to make them sad. It's like anybody could make a movie about, you know, oh, here's this kid, this sad kid, he's dying, and there's a dead dog or whatever, you know, and people are like, oh my God, because you're human. I mean, anybody that has empathy, I mean, even if the movie's shit, you don't want to see, you don't like thinking about people being hurt or anything like that. But, you know, that's automatically, I always joke that like Oscar bait films always have somebody yelling out, my baby's dead! My baby's dead! Apparently they're all Southern. But you know what I mean? Like that, automatically critics will be jizzing in their pants. They're like, oh my God, we have to give this all the Oscars. But meanwhile, you could have a film that is like an exquisitely made comedy and is just taken for granted. Like, making people smile is viewed as cheap for whatever reason. Same with like porn and erotica. Like, turning somebody on is, oh, that's cheap. But exploiting them emotionally that's fine. Emotional pornography's fine. But goddamn, don't make them laugh or give them a boner, because then it's forget.
And comedy has such a wealth of, like, it carries, like, from a cultural perspective, such a wealth. If you really start, I wrote this essay last year on the buses, which was like a semi-serious essay, and everyone's like, why would you do this? But it's like, On the Bus has got so much amazing context. With Ferreri, he's making films, some of his most important films anyway, in the 60s and the 70s, where you have this incredible politically charged climate in Italy. It's violence. You've got, well, even talking of the year 1969, like around the world, 1968, 1969, the whole thing is kicking off. And you see that in Italian comedy, the way that they discuss or explore aspects of Italian society and how it's changing. And Marco Ferreri was very, very good at that. He was always looking forward to, what does this mean? Where will we end up? And Cedar Man's probably one of the best films that he does that in, because he proposes this strange future to us that, you know, some things change, but some things stay the same. So he was really interesting. I think the comedies of that period really tell us a lot about what was going on, because it's the one genre where you can be as absurd as you want and as abstract as you want, and you can take on really subversive subjects. You can be very political. So I just don't get it. I just don't get why people ignore this stuff. They tend to get, maybe it's a comedy, you know, unless it's like Lubitsch or someone. They don't want to know. Charlie Chaplin. They don't want to know. So I'm ranting now, but it's a subject I feel really, really passionate about. I was shopping around a book on Italian comedy for a couple of years. Like, no publisher would touch it. They just don't see a market. And I think people should watch these. They're just so a wealth of rich context and just amazing and really ludicrous, some of them. People like to be more, like Heather said, more on the dramatic end. And it's like, you know, do you want to watch The Marriage Story? No, thank you. I don't want to watch 3 hours or something, people getting divorced. I want to watch Marcello Mastroianni trying to blow up fucking balloons. Thank you.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. Can we put that as a byline on something? I want to read that book. I mean, that's the thing, is like, it's a struggle I think a lot of us film, you know, writers and podcasters go through, is that, you know, we're all kind of fighting this uphill battle for exposure and respect and preservation for a lot of artists that people are like, oh, we don't see the money in it. And on one hand, I mean, it's a business. We get that. We understand that. But on the other hand, it's like, you're kind of fighting for history. Like, we're fighting for something. I mean, think about it. This film now is still as relevant in 2020 as it was when it came out in a lot of ways. I mean, right?
Absolutely. Or even more so. Even more so, seeing as we're now like 2 minutes to midnight.
Well, and you still, you know, there's still fight over like women's bodies and reproductive rights, you know, plagues, as Mike, you mentioned, the coronavirus, you know, the nuclear threats always hanging over. I feel like that's never ended. So this is art, and it does need to be put out there. And I mean, you know, if the Royal Tenenbaums can get a nice release, then surely to shit, this should be getting.
I like the Royal Tenenbaums. Am I the only one? What is that?
Maybe the only one on this podcast.
Yeah. I know it's a horribly pretentious film, but I don't know. I like it because of Gene Hackman.
I do love Gene Hackman. If they had blown up at the end, I would love it.
Especially Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh,
do a whole series of films that would be better if the people blew up at the end.
We're going to go all Zabriskie point on this. Come on. Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Actually, every Gwyneth Paltrow movie should have ended with her blowing up.
Or maybe started that way.
Yes. Yeah. That way we don't have to deal with 90 minutes of her.
It makes sliding doors so much better.
Imagine if it's Seven, when he's like, what's in the box? And he opens the box and it explodes. Like, Seven's head explodes.
Isn't this a wonderful thing about Marco Ferreri, though? This is what his work does. It, like, inspires people into these really absurd realms. But he is just, I find him very inspiring, even though a lot of his films end on these really nihilistic notes. They never feel like downbeat or kind of like, you know, Like when the explosion happens at the end of Cedar Man, you're like, fuck yeah, that's like the best explosion I've seen in my life. Like the meaning of it is like everything's gone. There's no point to this. You know, what was the point? But you don't feel like that. And that happens with a lot of his films that have really kind of nihilistic endings. You have castration endings, you have cannibal endings, you have people dying in childbirth endings. You just have these things, but you never walk away from Marco Ferreri just feeling like, ugh, like some of those films and the big meaningful end. You normally walk away like, wow.
You just nailed something for me about this film is that, this film is heavy and we're dealing with a lot of grim things, but you're right. You don't feel, there's some films that are brilliant, but they're so intensely depressive and dark that you kind of like, you need to watch, I'm going to go watch some Monty Python or something now and try and recalibrate. And with this one, it almost reminds me of watching like some of Jodorowsky's films where it's like there's heaviness and they're two very different filmmakers. But the Jodorowsky would go on to use a man building a woman out of stone and trying to make love to that, which is kind of a nice parallel to Chino's Sandwoman. But yeah, there's like a respect for the audience. There's a love. I don't know. There's something here. I don't know. You guys have definitely, like, as sort of the neophyte on this to Ferreri on this episode, I want to go see everything he's made, just between, like, hearing you, Kat and Mike, hearing you guys talk about it, but also just this film alone. Because I like Tales of Ordinary Madness, but it didn't push me like this one has.
Yeah, his best periods are really his earlier periods, and in the 70s are like his two best periods. Like, there's value in all of his work, but it's like his peak is, like, he's totally on peak with Seeds of Man. Like, after Dillinger is Dead, which is like his first kind of experimental film, he started to really play around with stuff. So then you got Seeds of Man was like I don't know if they were made the same year, I think, even, or released the same year. Very, very close together. And then he did things like Liza as well, where Marcello Mastroianni and Catherine Deneuve, who were together at the time, live on this island together, and she kills this isn't a spoiler, this is the synopsis, if you look the film up. She accidentally kills his dog I think she purposely kills it. Anyway, the dog gets killed, and she willingly replaces the dog and lives as his dog. And that is a fucking crazy film. Another one set on a beach. They're in isolation. It's like he'd like to put people in isolation into these like little Le Grand Booth. They go off to some villa in the middle of nowhere where they're just kind of cut off. What was that later one about the cannibal? I can't remember the name of it, but that's kind of set in isolation. Yeah, he liked to do that as well, I think, just to see how people interacted with each other. And he put them in these ludicrous positions, and he'd see how things played out. But to go to Heather's point, the few people that have written about Ferreri, they often put him together with Jodorowsky and Louis Buñuel, with the connection to the theatre of the absurd. Because there is like a spiritual connection between those three. I think more of a connection to Buñuel in terms of humour. Like, Buñuel is one that you got away with comedy, actually, and he gets onto Criterion, but I think Marco Ferreri just got too weird for the arty critics.
And like you said, he loves to take the piss out of people, so...
He does.
He was basically antagonistic with the critics, so...
Which you don't do. That was Elio Petri's downfall as well. They kind of loved him, and then he went off to win his Oscar with Citizen Above Suspicion. And then he kind of did All the Working Class Go to Heaven, where he criticised the left and right, and that was it. They just fucking turned on him. I mean, poor Elio Petri, by the 80s, just before he died, because he died quite young of a heart attack, he'd just given up. He didn't want to make any more films just because of the way the critics had treated him. And I think Marco Ferreri became similarly disillusioned by the end, which is kind of sad.
And he was making movies all the way up until, I'm going to say, mid-90s, right before he passed away.
Yeah, and he was, semi-young. He didn't quite make it to 70, did he? But I think his last period, he has more of a cynical attitude, whereas in his earlier films, you get this sense of fun. Even in something like Seed of Man, which we're talking about, it's like a very nihilistic dystopian film, but we're laughing all the way through it. Even though it's not consciously a comedy, it's just so weirdly life-affirming to watch a film like that. It's not like late August at the Hotel Zone, which is equally brilliant, but you come out of that film devastated. You're just kind of like, oh my God.
Right. It took a lot for me to rewatch Late August, but with this one, I happily rewatch Seeds of Man.
It's so good. Yeah, I'm hoping like anybody that listens to this episode who is not familiar with this film will definitely. I mean, we hope that with all episodes, but oh my gosh, yeah, this film needs to be championed to the hillside.
They all do. They're just all so absolutely wonderful. I know one person who does really champion Ferreri is our mutual friend Heather Brad Stevens, who actually met Ferreri, but he's the man to talk to about Ferreri because he actually met him and interviewed him. But I rarely come across people that have who champion him as much. Brad being one of the ones who really, he knows all about the different cuts and everything. It's like the oracle.
Brad's great. Anybody listening to this who hasn't read anything by Brad Stevens, check him out. Brad's one of the best.
Yeah, here's hoping that he makes Ferreri his next book subject.
That would be wonderful, especially if he's got interview material, because there just needs to be something out there, and it's just really sad that there's not. There's this just big gap, or you read things online, and it's basically people just don't get it. They just don't understand it. So people saying Bye Bye Monkey is boring. It's like, how do you fucking say that? What is wrong with you? Gerard Depardieu adopts a chimp, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, well, and it actually, I still need to see it. That's one's been on my want list for a long time. The main actress in it, I think she's credited as Gail Lawrence. She was actually a golden age of erotica actress under the name Abigail Clayton. So she's one of the early examples of somebody from the world of X doing a crossover, so to speak. Like, in the 70s, it's basically her and Marilyn Chambers, because Marilyn was in Rabid. But a lot of people don't mention Abigail Clayton.
No, because she's associated with the Ferreri, and he's like...
No. But, which is so cool, though. It's like, gosh, that's, that kind of beats, I don't know, it's like poor, like, you think about Jamie Gillis, and his straight film was Night of the Zombies, which I haven't seen, but come on, Jamie deserved better.
All right, guys, we're going to take another break and play a preview for next week's show.
Fuego. Fire. The white-hot heat of a woman possessed of an uncontrollable, unnatural passion, so all-consuming as to make the flames of hell mere glowing embers. Fuego, the insatiable, depraved hunger of a woman shorn of her mask of fidelity and respectability, and bared for what she really is, a crazed female animal on the prowl, a dehumanized creature grasping and clawing for instant gratification from any source and any sex. Fuego, a woman beyond help. The help of physicians or a husband's unswerving love, fighting frenetically to suppress the ravaging torments of a disease that drives her wantonly to perversion, madness, and self-destruction.
Te voy a matar. Te voy a matar. Perro. Te voy a matar, chica. Déjame. No. Un hombre, no. No.
Fuego is a story of a man as well. A distraught husband tortured by forces and events too overwhelming to cope with, living a nightmare with only tenderness, understanding, and devotion to guide him out of a maze from which there can be no escape. willing to sacrifice his own self-respect, if only to insulate her and share in her ordeal. Fuego is a film the likes of which you have never seen before, because it is the authentic story of a real person told with integrity and stark candor. It is as shocking as only real life can be, without contrivance or false reserve. It is, in fact, so bold and frank that it was banned in the very country where it was made, and its producer-director forced to flee in exile for having merely been the objective reporter of a case history heretofore only whispered in hushed tones. Fuego, starring Isabel Sarli, the voluptuous goddess of the South American screen, and Armando Bo, Argentina's leading producer-director. Suggested for mature adult audiences only. Fuego, a Haven International Pictures release.
That's right, we'll be back next week with a look at Armando Bo's Fuego, where I'll be joined once again by Heather Drain. Until then, what's happening with you, Heather?
Kat and I, as those of you who may not know, or hopefully know, we are the Hell's Bells. We have a podcast, and we're going to be recording our newest episode here very soon, with us scaring incels and wokesters alike with Feminism a Go-Go. Also, for the devoted and curious, you can pick up mine and John Skip's epic film tome, The Bizarro Encyclopedia of Film Volume 1, at Barnes & Noble online.
Very cool. And Kat, what is happening in your world?
Well, and another plug for the House Bows episode. We're gonna be more House Bows this year. We're making a concerted effort to record every month, and we've got some great things on our planner. So we're really looking forward to that.
Well, thank you again for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please head on over to the website, projectionboothpodcast.com, where you can find out more about today's episode. You'll also find a link over to Patreon, where you can make a donation to the show. Every donation we get helps the Projection Booth take over the world.
You should come with me to the end of the telling your parents and your friends. You know that you only need say a word, so we might live at the end of the world. But I know that I'll go away by myself. I feel you don't want to come. You should come with me to the end of the world. We could lie all day on the quiet sands. I would introduce you to my friend the bird who sings and flies along the furry strands. But I know that I'll go away by myself. I feel you don't want to come. To the end of the world, I'll give you anything that lives on earth. You that you only need say a word, so we might live at the end of the world. But I know I'll go away by myself. I feel you don't want to come.
If you enjoy this show and want more people to know about it, head on over to iTunes, leave a comment, and rate it 5 stars. Make sure you like and share us on Facebook, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Just search for Christopher Media. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Most importantly, we would like to take the time to extend an extra special thanks to you. Christopher Media could not exist without your support. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Christopher Media. Let's make some noise.